welcome to Table Tennis Philosophy. Glad you're here. All right, had a question that was asked about racket angle, particularly using long pips on your forehand. This may not seem like this applies to you at all, but let me tell you that I'm going to give you sort of a series of racket angles depending on exactly what type of rubber you're going to use. And let's start with inverted rubber. Okay, if you use smooth rubber, particularly thick sponge, your racket angle is going to be quite closed, really almost flat like that on some shots. On your normal topspin drives back and forth, you'd have a much more closed racket angle than you would with some other rubber. If you get, say, thinner sponge, you might find yourself having to open it up just a little bit so it's not quite as closed as you would make on some shots. Of course, this depends a bit on the height of the ball, might depend a bit on your height, the exact spin. There's a lot of little things, so this is just generally speaking. All right, so your normal racket angle for just hitting your standard forehand drive is fairly closed. All right, now if you go to pips and short pips, you're going to open that up a little bit. And in fact, if you've got fairly thin sponge on that and pips that don't create a lot of spin, you're going to be hitting much more direct, much more flat. On the other hand, if you've got some what would be considered spinny short pips and a lot of sponge, it gets closer to inverted. You could use it almost inverted with that more closed angle. Now, where it really starts getting interesting is once you go to medium pips and to long pips. Now you can't just hit flat and somewhat closed. You're actually going to have to change the racket angle to more almost an open, not even a neutral racket angle. And for some long pips, you can hit like that and hit fairly effectively. I mentioned the Tibhar Grass D-Tex with sponge. Again, with sponge, makes hitting quite a bit easier with long pips. Now, some long pips are made for hitting. You are maybe not made for hitting, but at least with sponge can be used for hitting, and they're maybe advertised as made for hitting. Say you've got no sponge, the ox version of long pips, you're going to have to open up quite a bit your racket angle to hit. And if the pips bend significantly, hitting is going to be pretty tough, even with your forehand. And I'm not saying you can't do it. I've hit with all manner of long pips with my forehand, but it's probably not going to be all that terribly effective against your better competition. As you probably realize, long pips can mess up your weaker competition no matter how you use it if you can keep it on the table. But that's kind of what you're looking at. So with the inverted, very closed, go to short pips, not quite as closed, starting to hit flat, about like that maybe. Medium pips, you're starting to open up a little bit, and long pips opening up quite a bit. And it's not a difficult stroke if you learn how to do it, if you get used to it. Since I sometimes hit with smooth rubber, or sometimes short pips, medium pips, long pips, I get pretty used to changing my racket angle as needed. Currently, I'm using medium pips on my forehand. It's got quite a bit of speed, and that's kind of right in the middle, but it's still a long way from what the racket angle would be, say, if I was using Tenergy or Hurricane or something like that on my forehand. So it all depends on the characteristics of your rubber, on exactly what the racket angle is going to be, and all of this that I showed you on your forehand is the same, same principle on your backhand as well. All right, so hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.